I mean, the place that they're meeting is really beautiful, really an elegant place, like an estate in somewhere in Northern California. And I wasn't invited. But okay, uh, a leading member of the Italian parliament
Wow.
said that his country is prepared to return the lost temple vessels to Israel, and that the time to do it is now.
Wow.
So he's talking about the Ark of the Covenant, Nora, a variety of other things. And some of us might say, is this true? Is it possible that for the past 2,000 years, the Vatican has kept these most sacred objects of the Jewish people? And is it possibly true that if they did keep those things, would they now be willing to return it? So two things have happened. One, there has been a mass explosion of social media comment in Jewish and non-Jewish places. I think the non-Jewish places are maybe even more excited. In any event, there is huge excitement about this, and it is my absolutely informed position that this is a garnished. This is a nothing, and that they're not going to reveal, and they don't have, and the whatever. After 2,000 years, don't ask me to keep on holding my breath. I just am not going to do it. But in the world outside, they're really talking about this. Oh my God, what happens if the Jews get the Ark of the Covenant? And I would just suggest that we don't hold our breath. Next, unless you want to, offer some suggestions as to how Spielberg could put it into another movie or something, Raiders of the Newfound Ark.
But they're not offering to dismantle the arch and send the stones back.
Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
The Ark is really up in the mountains in Ethiopia. I know that. I mean, the people there, they have guards and they have the whole thing, and they say it's there. I'm not altogether there.
Rabbi, may I ask you a question?
What?
Don't you think that the angels of the Lord that around the covenant, the ark, that because the symbol, the gold cherubim of the angels, the real angels are like traveling with us?
No, I don't. Okay. I am a little bit dubious.
I just think they are.
Yitz Greenberg is one of my teachers. I don't know if you've known his name. Does anyone here know Yitz Greenberg as a name? In a couple of people, three people. Yitz Greenberg is something must be going on in the world. This group is growing by leaps and bounds. Yitz Greenberg is an Orthodox rabbi, a superb scholar, a scholar currently affiliated with the Shalom Hartman Institute, a scholar who is not only deep in his orthodoxy, but profound in his openness to all forms of Jewish expression. Yitz Greenberg, he has a book out, by the way, on the holidays. I don't remember his name. But if you go looking on Amazon and you find Yitz Greenberg and you find the holiday book, it is a permanent gem with all kinds of new understandings of how to understand, deal with Jewish holidays. So Yitz Greenberg issued what I consider to be a clear statement of truth that we Jews are going to have to struggle for years to grapple with the enormity of what is happening today, Israel, Gaza, anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism. He so often, when we live in cataclysmic times, we can disregard the possibility that it's sui generis, one of a kind. It's never been this way. We miss that. Greenberg issued a statement that for the Jewish people, his language, the trauma of aloneness has returned. I don't know how he comes up with language that I immediately say, boy, I get that. Boy, I get that. The trauma of aloneness. We went through a period of time in the 70s and 80s, certainly, when actually there were newspaper articles about how being Jewish is in, and the people are converting, and the role of the Jewish people, elevated status, and we were like always invited to be everywhere. And folks, what's going on now, Greenberg says, is driving us back into what has been an historic encounter with aloneness. And then he asks, at what price do we sacrifice our values to reduce our aloneness? Isn't that a great question? Because it isn't just, should Israel continue attacking the Shifas, the hospital, or this, that, or the other? It's the world wants Israel to stop its offensive, give a permanent ceasefire, and stop annoying people. And Greenberg's comment is just a question. At what point do we say we will take the aloneness because we will not sacrifice our existence? Now, that's a very strong comment, and I'll pause for a moment, Steve Miller, and if anyone else wishes to come in. Yitz Greenberg.
This isn't directed toward that as much as toward your comment at the end about a ceasefire, etc. I think one of the problems, and I don't know how you rectify this, is a huge, huge majority of the people calling for a ceasefire, calling Israel an aggressor, especially on the far left, somehow have it in their head that as soon as they do that, we could have a two-state solution and everything will be hunky-dory. And we all know they've declined this two-state solution 7 times, and there's nothing we can see that would indicate that if Israel stops fighting, that's going to happen.
Thank you. Rebecca.
Well, I think we collectively were alone during the Holocaust. No one paid attention. No one accepted refugees. And having just gone through the Auschwitz exhibit yesterday, I kind of felt alone as I was walking through it.
Thank you. Other comments? Sukasa, though you're not raising your hand electronically, are you here? Is that you, Sue? No, I can't see. Oh, it's Susie. I'm sorry, Susie. You're dark and I couldn't read you. Okay. I can't hear you. Sue, are you there? I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I think on the other hand, Rabbi, contrary to what was going on in the United States with the Holocaust, I think the Jews today, I'm only going to speak about the ones right here in our own country. I think we are bonding together. I think we're finding strength in one another. I think we're finding strength in being Jewish. And yesterday, that demonstration, I was there with I don't mean I was there, but every time I turned on the news, I could see the strength of the Jews. So that gives me a lot of feeling of hope. There we go.
Thank you. Thank you. Howard Weisberg.
I have been very surprised at what I think. Maybe I'm misperceiving this, but I'm very surprised that in this whole controversy that the Torah and thinking by rabbis and analysis, and especially around the issue of retribution, vengeance, is that acceptable to Jews? The old concept of purity of arms that the IDF used to talk about. None of these things seem to be on very many people's minds. It's as if they're not important.
Thank you. And I'm going to hold here to kind of bounce off of Howard's comment. One of the most anti-Zionist Hasidic sects. Its leader, Satmar, yesterday condemned the attack on Gaza, on the Jewish, he condemned October 7th. You have to understand, this man meets with the Ayatollah in Iran. He is absolutely opposed to a Jewish state because it was not brought by the Messiah. And Howard, yesterday, 2 days ago, forgive me, he said that this was an atrocity against the Jewish people. It didn't mean that he embraced the Jewish state. It does mean that a lot of people, even among the most Torah-centered, are finding this unbearable and unacceptable. Now, the reason I wanted to jump in, by the way, I'm seeing a group of people, some of whom I have not seen before. Please know that we love you and welcome you, and come back in 2 weeks and we'll try not to have a war, but other things to discuss. But you're really welcome and I'm delighted to see you. The issue, Howard, in halachic terms is a just war. That is a technical term in Jewish law, a just war. And what makes a just war? And simply, if someone rises up to destroy you, strike them first. That's a Talmud quote. One of the ways in which Jews describe a just war is an existential war. That was the reason why the Maccabees agreed to fight against the Syrian Greeks on Shabbat. That was the first occasion in Jewish history in which we have scriptural approval for fighting on Shabbat. Up until then, the Jews were vulnerable to attack. Their enemies knew it. On Shabbat, Jews wouldn't fight. It changed during the Maccabean period. If someone is out to destroy us, we should, not may, we should strike them first. But in all the discussion in the rabbinic literature about just wars, there are all kinds of caveats which sound achingly familiar. Civilians. An attack that is commensurate with the assault. These are argued in rabbinic texts. I can assure you, based upon, I guess, my reading of the Israeli press, that today no one is raising that question. The unity within the Jewish people to pursue this war is astonishingly high. I don't want to lecture it because there's so much to talk about. But Howard, thank you for raising that. Thank you. And it is normally a key question. And as of right now, it is not being heavily debated. To put it differently,
Netanyahu said we're going to get excessive vengeance. And then he talked about Amalek. And
Amalek is a funny thing, and I know that Amalek is used in this current conversation. But please understand that the attack called for against Amalek is in retribution for what Amalek did to the Israelites as they left Egypt. It is not against Amalek being a current, active, existential threat. Different category. But Amalek is thrown up by a lot of people who don't quite grasp that. Okay, so let me move forward. I'm going to ask a question, and the question requires a little backup. Where is America headed with regard to Israel and its pursuit of terminating the effectiveness of Hamas to be an actor in politics? Progressive Democrats are growing in number and in opposition to Israel's position, period. The progressives in the Democratic Party do not support Israel on this matter. That's one thing. Two, 500 workers within the government, including in the State Department. Steve, you're going to let me finish, okay? I'm doing a setup.
Yep, of course.
500 government workers sent a letter of protest against the government's position of supporting Israel. Now, there is a method within the government to send, for workers to send protest letters. It's a good thing. They have a way of saying, if you don't like what's going on, you may write these letters and we'll treat them seriously. So the sending of the letters is permitted, encouraged. 500 sent a letter saying that the United States government's on the wrong side and should not be supporting Israel in this matter. The flip side is that 500 is a terribly infinitesimally small number of government workers, but it's 500. Pressure from around the world. Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau Tuesday urged Israel to stop, quote, the killing of women, of children, of babies. Trudeau's comment drew a sharp response from the Israeli government, from Bibi, but from the government. And he backtracked. Trudeau backtracked. I'm not big on backtracking. I want to believe what you said first. That's me. For political reasons, whatever, I didn't really mean what I explicitly said. But what he explicitly said was Israel is killing women, children, and babies in the Gaza Strip and should stop. It didn't include anything about these people are exposed to death because of where Hamas builds its command nodules. It just said Israel should stop. He retracted. During a news conference, Trudeau then lamented the heart-wrenching situation in Gaza and said the price of justice cannot be the continued suffering of all Palestinian civilians. All wars have rules. All innocent life is equal in worth, Israeli and Palestinian, thus spinning out what is the most, to me, obnoxious expression of equivalency. Yeah, every life is worthwhile. Every life has equal value. But for me, you can't hide behind equivalency and free speech to allow the assault on Israel to continue. So I am now asking the question, where is America headed? I'm open to your genteel, loving, thoughtful, caring comments. Steve.
I have two comments. The first is we're not doing as well as we ought to, because what's also growing tremendously is the far right and the Freedom Caucus and the growing number of Republicans now also being opposed to American policy, especially those in the House.
Yes.
I also want to say, in terms of valuing life, there's an expectation that Israel needs to value Palestinian lives even more than Hamas does. Not only do they use them as human shields, and fuel was sent to a hospital, they confiscated it, and a Hamas leader openly said, it's not for us to protect the Gazans, that's the UN's job. Our job is to get rid of Israel.
Thank
So
you.
if they don't care about the Palestinians, why?
Wait, hold it, please.
Okay.
Rebecca.
I think America is going to continue to become more and more divided. I think it's very difficult for all of us and maybe even those who are in government to figure out what's propaganda and what's fact.
Thank you. Comment. I'm really anxious to hear your perspective on where do you think America is headed? Where do you think? Anyone else want to contribute?
May I speak, Rabbi?
Okay, Donna, briefly.
I guess just sir. Of course, I don't know, have that much knowledge really. I think America's headed wherever we take her with music and sports, and the voices out there that have a voice, and we need to have more people on the platform with the media and music and stuff and the news that have a voice that will tell the truth. And that's the question of the day for me. Why can't all us celebrities like to support Israel get out there and really raise our voices?
And our question is, where is America headed?
Right,
And
that's where we're headed if we do the right thing.
Okay, anyone else really wish to contribute? Because I think it's an important question. Diane?
Question. Is it true that all children in Palestine are taught at an early age to want to discontinue Jews and the Jewish state? If that is true, then I don't think Israel has a choice. If that's not true, that there are Palestinians that are not in favor of destroying Israel, that's the question I need clarity on.
I can answer that one with atypical brevity. There are many Palestinians, and there are many Arabs and Muslims, who want Hamas crushed. Not just that Israel should be able to exist, but view Hamas as a terribly disruptive force. Let me just comment, Diane, and I'd like this just to be between the two of us and have nobody else listen. In the school systems of Israelis and Palestinians, you sometimes have teachers expressing highly unacceptable things. You notice I said Israeli as well as Palestinian. There was a time when all Palestinian school books called for the destruction of Israel. This still exists, but not to the previous extent, because in fact, the world is working on that. I hope the same is true within Israel. There are those Israelis who believe that there is no place in the Holy Land for any Arab at all. Period. They say it. The so-called hilltop youth, if you know them, the settlers, the younger settlers in the West Bank, who are currently today carrying out violent attacks on Palestinians in the West Bank. I try to love everybody. Honestly, I do. It's easy to love all of you, but sometimes there are people who are hard to love. I find it hard to love Jews who want to drive Arabs out or not give them equal rights. I find it hard to love Palestinians who won't say there's a place for both of us. Do those people exist, Diane? Yes. Do they represent anything resembling the majority? No, no, and no. Michael,
Yeah, a couple of things. First, I dropped a link in the chat that speaks to what you were just saying. It's research that was conducted, reputable research, just shortly before October 7th, where it was found that a healthy majority of Gazans both support a two-state solution and to actually blame Hamas for the economic blight of Gaza and not Israel. Obviously, again, opinions may very well have changed dramatically in the time since then, but up until the latest cataclysm, that was the state of things. And even in the West Bank, where Palestinians have much more reason to be fearful and hate the Israeli settlers, even there, it was, I believe, roughly a 50-50 split on that question of a two-state solution. The thing that I wanted to say, Rabbi, to your question about where America is going, I would hope, I think we understand that President Biden is putting more pressure on the Netanyahu government than is being led on publicly in terms of their approach to the war and the need to mitigate civilian casualties to the very greatest extent possible, which didn't seem to necessarily be the government's default position. I would hope that would continue. I would also hope that there would be continued pressure as we go forward to get back on a path of peace, which obviously is not going to happen with Netanyahu present, but it looks like the Israeli constituency is ready to throw him on his tuchus as soon as the opportunity presents itself. And maybe Gantz will come in and actually pull a Rabin and try and start moving things back toward a solution. I don't know how that works on the Palestinian end of things because the PA can't do it and Hamas isn't going to do it. And I don't know how we get past that. But it feels like we need to use our position to help get things moving because they've been moribund for a very long time now.
Michael, thank you. As always, thank you for the wisdom of your comments and the experience and the knowledge you bring. In politics, folks, we all know this. There's no necessity for politicians to choose the best, most ethical, moral position over a position which will give them electoral strength in the next election. I don't totally condemn that because that's the nature of the political process. Why do I mention that, Michael? Biden's support in the African American community is dropping. The African American community was crucial in the last election. Biden has to look at that and say, there are many in the African American community who are associated with the vulnerable, the dispossessed, and view the Palestinians this way, and therefore are totally opposed, maybe to Israel's existence, but at least to how Israel is acting with its neighbors. It's going to be real pressure on Biden. We're not talking little pressure. The second group that fits that category are the college students. They view the world, I was once a college student. We had to use candlelight. We rode to school on horses, but I was a college student. And at that point, I was very far to the left. And I understand how that works. But you see college students now in large numbers putting out statements that say, you should have a permanent ceasefire, and only with a permanent ceasefire will the Arabs and the Jews be able to sit down and negotiate peace. If I had more hair, I would tear it out. But that's another category of voter that Biden is worried about. So his love for Israel, I think, is not less than 100%. His need to be reelected is a challenge even to that. I'm going to leave it there, but it's a challenge. Okay, Risa.
I'm afraid I'm pretty upset about where America is going to be and where we're headed. If the Republican Party actually goes ahead and nominates Trump,
God forbid.
win or lose, and I really believe this, it will have a tremendous impact on our State Department, and we'll be back where we were in the early 40s. We will be a very anti-Semitic country. If the government takes that stand, that would be horrific. But the fact that anti-Semitism is growing the way it is right now, and that it's acceptable in the country, tells me that America is going to be stepping back away from a positive feeling about the Jews. Let me put it that way.
Rachel, people can change this. We can change it.
We'll hold it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Lisa, just check our passports. We have to have 2 passports each, just in case. I thought
I love
earlier
you.
that a passport to Canada would also be helpful, but Canada may not be safe. So maybe Iceland. I'm not sure.
Love you. I gotta go.
Please go. I just heard that Belize has condemned Israel. Israel is losing support country by country in places where it should have support. I'm going to move on because there's so much. I want to talk about the March on Washington. Who are the unhappiest Jews in America? Any thoughts connected to the March on Washington? 900 Jews from Detroit. They flew into Dulles Airport, big delegation, in order to join the march, and the bus drivers refused to take them to the march area. They never got there.
What was the reason?
They didn't want to help the march succeed, and they didn't want to play a part in it, period. So the unhappiest people from yesterday are the 900 who didn't make it. Can you imagine going back home to Detroit, getting back on a plane, having not been able to join the march, and then explain to your spouse or your community organization why they paid for your ticket and why that ticket brought no benefit.
I hope they get fired, all of those bus drivers.
Well, I have no idea how, the union, I have no idea. If they could be fired, I think that would be lovely. But anyway, now, there were approximately 290,000 people there. The initial projections were like 60 big grab to 100. And then it grew and grew and grew. I think that the numbers and the strength of the turnout, Risa offers hope. The Jewish people are aware, and we're not going to walk away. But we had a little problem. Pastor Hagee, Hagee. Any of you know who Pastor Hagee is?
Yes, yes.
Pastor Hagee, for the few who don't, heads up CUFI, C-U-F-I, Christians United for Israel, CUFI. He is an evangelical minister, Christian minister, evangelical, who is a powerfully strong supporter of Israel, pays for, supports all kinds of good things, as well as assemblies to bring together Israeli supporters. He also has kind of a long record sheet of anti-Semitic statements. Liberals will not let CUFI into their gatherings. So you won't see CUFI invited to address the Union of Reformed Judaism. It was decided that no rabbis would address the march yesterday. If I only knew what it meant, I would take umbrage. I don't know what that means, but I think it means I'd be very upset. And no rabbis were invited, and some of us are really good. But Pastor Hagee was invited, and he did address the crowd. Progressive elements in the Jewish community have been rushed to the hospital hemorrhaging because of Hagee's invitation to speak. They feel they were cheated and misled. A whole group of people got together to sponsor the march, and they didn't expect Hagee to show up. And ladies and gentlemen, there he was. So that battle is going to continue. No one should think that we Jews are totally of one mind, even when it comes to a march on behalf of Israel. I have a strange notion that in times of emergency, maybe you can be a little flexible if you can bring in support, a little flexible. I have friends and colleagues who would absolutely disagree with me on that. But that was the only dark cloud over what was a fantastic, safe, secure march. It was a good thing. Howard?
I'm wondering whether you heard anything that Pastor Hagee said that you didn't like. I heard him talk. I was very uplifted by his talk, I thought.
No, I tried to specify previous statements he made included anti-Semitic comments. He was golden yesterday.
I've heard him in the past. I certainly haven't researched him or heard every statement he's ever made, but I've never heard him say anything anti-Semitic. Maybe
I haven't either.
You can Google that. The stuff is there. You can Google that. There are people who have a strong case against Hagee.
But could it be perhaps because of their ultra progressive ideology that they call it anti-Semitic and really it isn't?
Why don't you Googleize it and see if you can come up with an answer to your own question, and let me know. Let me know. Maybe it's that. I don't think so. Steve.
Well, to me, the irony is the evangelical position is maybe very pro-Israel, but at heart, it's anti-Semitic in the sense their goal is to get us all to Israel. The Messiah comes and we convert or we're destroyed. And the only reason the rest of the Jewish community accepts their support is because they think their vision is never going to be, so we might as well accept their support. But it's almost an anti-Semitic position underlying their support of Israel.
You are totally correct in what is called supersessionism and the role of the Jew to play witness to the second coming, and that our miserable condition is pure testimony of the wrong choices we have made. Yes, that's true, Steve, and many fundamentalist Christians believe that. But I think with Hagee, it's more, but that's already enough to make a bunch of Jews say, thank you, but no thank you. Okay, we're going to go forward now. BBC. Anyone have anything to say about BBC? Okay, Howard, make it short and not inflammatory.
There are some really funny YouTube videos made in Israel satirizing the BBC, mock versions of their programs about Israel.
Yeah, I think it's Eretz Naderet. It's like a Saturday Night Live thing. Yeah, they have satirized BBC. Like
Indeed.
I have a news report from the only, boy, if I can remember this, from the only non-violent terrorist group, Hamas. And here's the truth. And you know, it's like Saturday Night Live, and everyone loves it. It's a great program. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh,
okay, they are a target.
I recommend those.
BBC is still in the colonial mode of empire. And their attitude about Israel and Jews leaves a huge amount to be corrected. They have never handled the fact that Israel did not blow up that hospital with the missile. They still are pretty much, well, we said it, let's move on. We don't have to address that question again. Their coverage of the war now is infuriatingly unfriendly to Israel. BBC, of course, is global, and they are pumping out this version of truth to the world. So when we talk about what's going on, I have another question for you. Here you're sitting as a negotiating team for Israel, and the Hamas people are saying, we're going to give you back 100 hostages. We're going to want a few hundred Palestinian prisoners released from Israeli jails, and we want a prolonged cessation of fighting. But this would bring, first point, 100 hostages back home. Okay, you're on the committee. You each have a voice. How would you vote on that offer? How would you vote?
Abstain.
All right, Steve gives me a thumbs down, which is a very articulate way to handle it. How would you do? Would you exchange prisoners for hostages and an extended, I don't know, it's not exactly a ceasefire because it has an end time, but sort of a ceasefire. What would you do? What do you feel? Okay, Diane.
I think because of politics, Israel is stuck. I think that the world, if we don't go ahead with the deal, the world will criticize Israel more. I think. Not that I like it, but I think that's what will happen.
Thank you. Okay, I have either and Herb and Sylvia.
They returned how many Hamas thieves and terrorists to get Gilad Shalit back? And what did that do? It made them hate Israel even more. So the answer in my mind is no, you can't have your crazy people back. And you have to return our hostages because those are the rules of war that you think we should follow, but you don't have to.
Woo! Okay, Sylvia, thank you. You made Steve happy, which makes me really worried. This negotiation is going on right now. And Bibi and Biden have spoken about it a number of times recently. There seems to be a level of momentum. That doesn't mean it's going to happen. Okay, please, Michael.
I would just want to know what happens after that. It's my understanding, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not sure, but it's my understanding that Israel and Hamas were actually in a state of ceasefire going into October 7th. So if that's the case, I don't know what meaning a ceasefire has when Hamas doesn't observe it and has already said, and I did see video of them saying this in so many words, is we're going to continue launching October 7th indefinitely. And so as much as I would love a return of the hostages, and as much as I would love an end of the civilian deaths in Gaza, which are awful, I don't know where it goes after that, other than that Hamas continues to slaughter Israelis.
And remember that we're talking about 239 people and their families. And they want their families out. Cindy.
Well, obviously we want all the hostages out, but of the prisoners, are most of them Hamas? Are, if they're returned with their anger, would they join Hamas and then Israel would turn around and try to kill them? They're safer in prison.
May I just offer a bit of truth? The leader of the October 7th massacre is apparently a gentleman who was in Israeli prison for 20 years. And during the Gilad Shalit prisoner release, he was released. And then he went on to become the leader of the most violent part of Hamas, which is hard to be violent, more violent than the violent. This fellow is a poster child for what would be wrong with a prisoner release.
Yeah, they're all future terrorists.
They're not all, Cindy, they're not all, but
enough.
There's a mess. It is a mess. And then if you're sitting where, I don't want anyone sitting where Bibi is sitting, but if you're sitting where the Israeli government is, and you're seeing, there's a march now from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. The parents, the families of the hostages are marching. God forbid the exchange doesn't occur and the Israeli assault continues and the hostages end up dead. There are rare moments when I say, I'm really glad I'm not in charge. I think I do a better job than most of them. But this, I'm glad I'm not in charge. This is a nightmare scenario, Steve.
The reason I had my thumbs down, ceasefire in the language of Hamas means a break for as long as it takes to get organized, to get munitions, to open up the tunnels, to resupply them, and to reorganize so that we can start over again.
Yep.
And Israel's attacking is just an interference with that. So there is no ceasefire, no matter what they say.
I thank you for that, and it's hard to disagree with that. I'm going to continue just because we're running out of time, which, as I said, maybe in 2 weeks it'll be boring. The line between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism may have been permanently blurred. There were many, many people who were insisting, and maybe with integrity because they believed it, that they opposed a Jewish religiously based state, but they are in no way opposed to Jews. After what's gone on these past few weeks, when people finally had to stand up and be counted, I think that the ability to separate out as distinct phenomena anti-Zionists and anti-Semites has faded. I don't know if it can ever be reestablished. By the way, CNN had a special on anti-Semitism. I thought it was good. I thought it was very good, my feeling. And one of the comments made, we should stop saying anti-Semitism because that hides what it is. It's Jew hatred. That's what it is. And we'll deal with it better. Now, I have 1 minute left. Good news. The chief rabbi of Tzfat has suggested dropping a nuclear weapon on the Gaza Strip to end the fighting.
Oh,
Here is Stanley being dumbstruck. Okay, all right. Later on, he said it was just metaphorical. I didn't really mean it. It's metaphorical.
Sure.
Okay, another thing which is not going to bring a smile, and I know here we end. At the music festival, with all those young people who were killed, a small number of them were not Jewish. Many of them who were not Jewish, many of them, all of them, whatever, were Israeli. A young woman, Alina Plati, Plahti, and her boyfriend, Yonatan, were both killed. She was in the middle of a conversion program. She was all set to finish up and not only be Israeli, but be a Jewish Israeli, and she was killed. Her hometown did not permit her to be buried in a Jewish cemetery. The the government and government ministers dealing with Jewish identity have condemned the local administration and said that if the government had known, they never would have permitted that denial of burial to take place. Let me just end. I want you to know that I have just sent a letter to the Pope asking the Pope to speak out explicitly against Hamas. Okay, Yitz Greenberg organized the letter. Okay, there were a couple of hundred people invited to sign the letter. It wasn't just me. But I think that when the Pope sees the letter, he's going to say, oh my God, Stanley is upset. So we'll see if we have any positive results. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for the return of the hostages. Pray for a world in which hatred, verbal, physical hatred will be reduced and humanity will have its day in the sun. I love you all. Thank you, newcomers. Come back. We're happy to see you. Thank you. Love. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Sandy.
Wonderful as always.
Bye.
Bye.